A weak quarter, but good reason for optimism in the future. Concordia Maritime's result after tax amounted to minus 30.8 million Swedish krona. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization, EBITDA, amounted to 9.2 million Swedish krona or $1.4 million US. Results per share of minus 0.64 krona and available liquid funds, including unutilized credit facilities, 242.1 million krona. Well, as you heard, Concordia Maritime's result after tax for the fourth quarter of 2013 turned out to be a disappointment in the light of anticipated improvements in the product tanker market. Earnings, EBITDA, amounted to 9.2 million Swedish krona, which compares to 52.9 million for the equivalent period last year, and the after-tax result of minus 30.8 million krona compares to plus 9.7 million for the equivalent period last year. For 2013 as a whole, earnings, EBITDA, amounted to 144.7 million krona, which compares to 228.4 million for 2012. The result after tax amounted to minus 28.8 million krona, which compares to minus 356 million for the previous financial year. The 2012 result includes an impairment of 411 million krona. Concordia's spot market earnings during the fourth quarter settled at a low of $10,000 a day, far below anticipated levels, which made it the worst quarter for many years. With 8 of Concordia Maritime's 10 P-MAX vessels on the open spot market, the quarter involved an uneven struggle to keep earnings at decent levels. Average earnings for the P-MAX vessels during all of 2013 amounted to $13,000 a day, which also contributed to the weak result. January 1, 2014 saw Kim Ullman take over as CEO for Concordia Maritime after Hans Norén. Kim Ullman has been involved in shipping during his entire working career, including many management posts, among others many years as vice president at Stena Bulk. He was also among those who took the initiative to establish the strategic shipping alliance with Texaco and was involved in setting up the Stena Sonangol Suezmax pool. He was also CEO for Stena Waco, a major player within the shipment of petroleum products and vegetable oils. Between 2012 and 2014, Kim Ullman was CEO of Stena LNG, responsible for the company's investment in gas transportation. 2 significant deals were concluded after the end of the period. One saw Concordia Maritime sign another agreement with the French energy and petroleum company Total, which will operate the P-MAX vessel Stena Paris on one of Total's special routes from Southeast Asia to Polynesia. Another deal's been just agreed upon with Shell Tankers Singapore Private Limited, whereby Stena Penguin and Stena Peros are to be put in operation by Shell in the open market and its internal cargo systems. Despite a disappointing close to the financial year 2013, Concordia Maritime is of the opinion that there are good reasons for optimism going forward. This is based partly on the 2 deals just mentioned, which mark a new strategy line, as well as a greater focus on niche trading and partly on the underlying trend towards a growing demand for product transports in the future. With us now is Concordia Maritime CEO Kim Ullman. Well, we could say welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Now, you've taken over the helm in a situation where many actors in the shipping industry as a whole in the world are struggling to survive. Are you perhaps beginning to regret you've taken on what could be described as quite a daunting task?
Absolutely not. It's a great challenge for me to take over Concordia, and Concordia Maritime has performed very well over the bad years through their good contracts, and we're well positioned now for the next phase.
The fourth quarter was a disappointment for you. What are your comments on this?
Well, I'm used to shipping volatility. I've been living with that for my entire career, and the absolute levels are not easy to predict, even though there are seasonalities in the market. But October, November normally are lower, but this time it came in much lower than we expected. So, yes, on the whole, the fourth quarter was a disappointment.
you've already struck a positive tone in anticipation of next year's earnings. What's behind this?
Well, we've seen over the years that the tanker market is slowly improving. We've been through the worst. The recession from 2009 has been broken. That trend line, I should say, has been broken. And we see potential for further improvements. We see the world economy is recovering. That gives higher demand for oil. We see refineries being shut down in the West. That gives longer transportation. And we see the order book with the shipbuilding companies is not as bad as we originally thought. So we see the demand being higher than new ships coming on stream. So there are signs of further improvement out there.
You bring with you considerable experience of the shipping world. What do you see as the most important measures needed to improve the figures and profitability for Concordia Maritime?
Well, all we can do is to roll up our sleeves and get to work. We need to make sure that the ships are optimally employed and they operate where the greatest earning potential is. And that is where I hope my 30 years experience in tanker shipping come in handy. I used to call it optimal positioning. That is to improve the utilization rates. And with that, earnings will certainly come as well. We do expect a better, stable tanker market on the whole. So things are looking pretty good.
One of the operations you worked with earlier is the Stena Sonangol Suezmax pool, where Concordia has its one and only Suezmax tanker, Stena Supreme. Now, this vessel could be described as something of a strange bird in your main area, product tankers. You describe, however, Stena Supreme as an added spice. What do you mean by that?
I certainly do. The crude oil tanker market has tremendous earnings potential when the right times are there. And even though this segment, the crude oil tanker segment, is behind the product tanker segment right now, we have already started to see signs of this earning potential. As recent as in December, January, we saw trades in the neighborhood of $100,000 a day. And to gain from this segment, the crude oil segment, is absolutely a nice extra spice in our mix.
We've been joined now by Concordia Maritime CFO Anna Forshamn. As we mentioned earlier in this report, Q4 was a disappointment for you. And yet you convey an optimistic expectation of the coming years. Could you elaborate on this?
Well, the fourth quarter was definitely a disappointment. We had expected more, both from the last quarter and 2013 as a whole. During the fourth quarter, 8 out of 10 P-MAX vessels traded in the spot market. So during the year, we have had a high exposure to the global freight markets, which for the last 3 months were rather weak. Average earnings for the P-MAX vessels during the quarter were around $10,000 per day on the spot market. And for the full year, the average earnings were slightly higher, $13,000 per day. In the last quarter, there were also some one-off costs, which had an impact on the EBITDA. So we closed the books for 2013 with a result of minus 28.8 million Swedish krona after tax, whereof the contribution from the last quarter was minus 30.8 million Swedish krona. As Kim described, the shipping industry is extremely volatile, and that's in a way part of the game. We have been lucky with the high earnings thanks to long time charter contract during the really hard times, the period between 2009 and 2012. But a loss is never positive, even though we have a longer view on our business than just a quarter. We still have an equity ratio slightly below 40%, no liquidity issues, and financing in place for the 2 IMO 2 MAX vessels, which will be delivered in the fourth quarter this year. And the next one is in the first quarter 2015. We believe that the negative dip we saw in the last quarter is a short-term issue, and that a trend curve for the freight rates step by step will increase during the next years, which means that the positive result will come back as well.
Our thanks to Concordia Maritime CFO Anna Forsham. You also heard CEO Kim Ullman. And that's it from us for now. We'll be back on the 29th of April with the report for the first quarter of 2014. Do join us then.